Okay, so this is a brief assembly or a disassembly and assembly instructional on a 120 psi pump, or for that matter, any of the 5800 series pumps. You begin by jotting down all of the particular information of the label just for technical purposes. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take the pump head off of the motor, so that then we can focus on the pump head itself and disassemble it. In the process, we're going to show how the upper housing comes off, the valve housing assembly comes off, and then the lower housing assembly, the three key pieces of the pump. So we'll start by first removing the two spade connectors that are on the switch on the top and bottom prong. You take those off. Once those are off, the pump head is free to be removed from the motor. You'll use a T20 Torx type driver. You can find these at Lowe's or Home Depot very inexpensively. It's a great way. It's a great. All of our fasteners are Torx. One, because the torque from the driver is entirely transferred into the fastener, which makes it do what it's supposed to do 100%, and much better fastening. And these Torx screws that we use are trilobial, so they actually bite into the plastic. These are the best plastic fasteners. So we'll take the three Torx screws that hold the pump pit onto the motor. Once you remove those three fasteners, the head comes off, the entire pump head. All that's left on this side, of course, is the motor and the little thrust washer. So we'll set the motor aside. We'll focus on the pump head. Now we're going to remove the remaining four screws that hold these parts together. As such, now the upper housing assembly, which includes the pump housing, the pressure switch, that just comes off now. You can actually separate all three assemblies, and again, those are upper housing. You'll notice that the two outlet valves have remained on the upper housing side. That's okay. These are supposed to go here, but that's just the way the pump disassembles. We then have the valve housing assembly. Can just come right out. You've got your inlet valves here, three of them. The two outlet valves are being removed now from the upper housing. They just happen to have stuck there. These are going to go back here. And of course the O-ring. The O-ring and the O-ring and the two outlet valves, those are very likely they're either going to stay on the valve housing assembly or they're going to be in the upper housing. You just need to take them off and put them back here. So essentially, now you're looking at all three parts. Now, in terms of cleaning this, I think just a nice rinse in water, whatever it takes. If you have some scale buildup on the valves here, a light dilution of white vinegar works really well with maybe a toothbrush, and you can take that off. You inspect this is the lower housing assembly, which includes the cam, bearing, wobbler housing, and the diaphragm. You can see that it's in very good shape. There's no debris clogged in there. We're going to have a look at now the upper housing assembly. As I mentioned, it has the pressure switch, upper housing. You have three bypass assemblies, the poppets and the springs. As you can see, this housing is very clean. There's no hair or debris caught inside. These poppets are now designed to not fall out when you turn the head over, which is kind of nice. This whole assembly will be together. So you would, clean as needed if you had to, and then to reassemble this, you simply go in the reverse order. We'll start by securing the outlet valves and the O-ring properly placed in the valve housing assembly. That's placed back. You coordinate it where you have your two holes closest to each other and the two holes furthest from each other. The valve housing goes onto the lower housing as shown. The edges of the valve housing snap into the ridge of the diaphragm, so you'll feel when it's on right. You just want to make sure that the O-ring is properly placed in the oval channel here so that it's not raised or twisted, and your outlet valves are in place. Holding it as so that the outlet valves don't fall out, you just put the upper housing over the top as shown, and you'll feel how that comes together into one piece. That's all put together. Holding it with your hand, you put your bolts back on. Each of our bolts also has a lock nut washer. Again, all that intended to ensure that the pump head is held together very securely for a long time. 4 screws will go on. You could tighten them crisscross, just like you would a tire. And 23 inch pounds of torque is sufficient. Actually, hand tightening is also okay, but 23 inch pounds to tighten these fasteners back on. The head now, there's a keyway. There's a keyway on the shaft, which will go onto the orifice here of the cam in only one way. So you just match up the keyway from shaft to cam. Put that together. The holes will line up. You'll find how the bolt here is lined up at the center of the pump. There's only one way the head goes on. It matches, and you'll feel when it snaps into place. And of course, there you go. You've got your left to right flow direction. There's a couple of little arrows right there that show you this is a properly installed head. And now the only thing left is to put the remaining 3 fasteners back on to secure the pump head onto the motor. You can also use 23 inch pounds of torque, or a hand tightening if you don't have a torque driver. Now you've secured the pump head onto the motor, and that is a completely assembled pump. In the meantime, you've been able to have access to all of the parts inside for any cleaning that's necessary. That concludes this short video.